That is why I cannot deny that Jimi Hendrix is the most influential guitar player of all time. Hey everyone, welcome back to the fastest growing YouTube channel in my 8-unit apartment complex. My name is Paul Collins, and this is The Artist Project, the show where I review musical artists, talk about my experience listening to them, and give my recommendations of which of their music I think you should listen to. This week, a deep dive on Jimi Hendrix and why he's the most influential guitarist of all time. Let's get into it. Jimi Hendrix was born Johnny Allen Hendrix on November 27th, 1942. But his father had his name changed to James Marshall Hendrix when he was only 3 years old. Kind of glad we're not talking about Johnny Hendrix today. Jimi was born in Seattle, Washington, and had a love for music from a young age. When he was a child, he found an old ukulele in the garbage, which only had one string, but he would pluck along to Elvis Presley, one note at a time. The next year, at the age of 15, he bought his first guitar for just $5, which is an equivalent to about $50 in today's money. He started a band while still in high school, but was actually fired during their first gig for showing off too much. Jimi Hendrix found himself in some legal trouble as a kid, and by the time he was 18 years old, was given the choice between prison and joining the U.S. Army. So he joined the Army. He was actually discharged a year later for spending too much time playing the guitar instead of fulfilling his duty. After that, he moved to Nashville, Tennessee, where he started playing the guitar on some local circuits and actually ended up as Little Richard's backing guitarist by 1965. Hendrix then moved to England in 1966, where he and his manager started to put together a band called the Jimi Hendrix Experience, which really just focused on his sound as the guitarist. Their first single, Hey Joe, peaked at number 6 on the UK charts. Their first album, Are You Experienced, was then released in 1967. That album peaked at number 2, just behind the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. From there, Jimi Hendrix's career only exploded. He and his band released their 3 studio albums within an 18-month span from May of 1967 to October of 1968. His third album, Electric Ladyland, got him the number 1 spot on the Billboard Top 200 charts here in the United States. By 1969, Jimi Hendrix was the highest paid musician in the world. He headlined at Woodstock in 1969, which is known as the greatest music festival of all time. It became a symbol of the countercultural movement, embodying the values of peace, love, and anti-establishment sentiments that defined the 1960s. Now, all of this fame, all of this popularity begs the question, if Jimi Hendrix is the most influential guitarist of all time, why don't more young people listen to his music today? More on that later, but for now, let's go back to the story. Like many musicians of the time, drugs and alcohol played a prominent role in Jimi Hendrix's life. Introduced to LSD in 1966, he frequently was using drugs and drinking, and when they mixed, he actually became reportedly very violent and angry. Over the years, his substance abuse became a bigger and bigger issue. On September 17, 1970, Jimi Hendrix was found unconscious and not breathing. After being rushed to the hospital in an ambulance, Jimi Hendrix was pronounced dead around noon on September 18, 1970. A tragic death sadly can cut a musician's life short, but it can also send their career into eternal fame. This begs the question, what made Jimi Hendrix the most influential guitarist of all time? To answer that, let's jump into my experience listening to Jimi Hendrix music.
After all the tracks are in the boxes.
I listened to Jimi Hendrix's entire discography in early 2023, which actually is not that much music to listen to considering he only had 3 studio albums. What shocked me most was how much I heard his sound in other artists that I'm more familiar with, including Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin, Eddie Van Halen, and a more contemporary artist, Jack White from the White Stripes. That's because Jimi Hendrix's sound has influenced, whether directly or indirectly, every guitarist that has existed since his career, especially with his playing style and sound. Jimi Hendrix had an ability to create sounds from the guitar that nobody had ever heard before. He was known for using a Fender Stratocaster, lots of feedback, and lots of effects, including the wah-wah pedal, overdrive, and just blasting his amps as loud as he could. Jimi Hendrix influenced Black Sabbath, Aerosmith, Judas Priest, Metallica, and more. He shaped the sound of basically every rock band that's existed. So, for you that's watching this video right now, what music should you listen to of Jimi Hendrix? Let's answer that with my recommendations.
So, are you experienced?
If you have never listened to Jimi Hendrix, I would recommend you just start off with a basic list of 3 songs. First, Purple Haze. Second, All Along the Watchtower, which funny enough is a Bob Dylan cover. If you want to learn about that, you can watch my Bob Dylan video. And third, his Star-Spangled Banner performance at Woodstock in 1969. Pretty epic, pretty revolutionary. Beyond that, I've created a playlist on both Spotify and Apple Music with my favorite Jimi Hendrix songs, so I'll make sure to link those playlists below so you can have access to them. If you're interested in jumping into an album, I would recommend his first album, Are You Experienced, which is where he really showed off for the first time his ability to make the guitar and the rest of the band just create sounds that had never existed before. Really, the Jimi Hendrix Experience as a band only released 3 studio albums, so if you want to jump into his music, it's really not that hard to listen to all of his studio albums. If you want a video experience, I would highly recommend watching his performances from Woodstock in 1969. It is crazy. So let's answer the question. If Jimi Hendrix is the most influential guitarist of all time, how come more people these days don't listen to his music? Honestly, after thinking about it and studying his music and other guitarists that have come since, my conclusion is that we listen to his influence, but we don't listen to his music. Let me explain. Jimmy's guitar playing has influenced 80s rock, grunge, pop punk, alternative rock, and all of its forms, and literally all guitar playing since his time. Maybe people don't listen to his music because it's over 50 years old and it's just not as common anymore. But they listen to rock music these days. If you're a fan of any rock music since the 1960s, you, my friend, have Jimi Hendrix to thank for that. Jimi Hendrix changed guitar playing like nobody else before him. Any artist since to have evolved that sound has Jimi Hendrix to thank for that. That is why I cannot deny that Jimi Hendrix is the most influential guitar player of all time. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in 2 weeks when I discuss Led Zeppelin and how they almost had the most atrocious band name of all time. My name is Paul Collins, and this is The Artist Project.